Servicing the world towards economic recovery. That's the given title of my speech. Next, please. So if we see an overall effects of COVID-19 on services, that was tough, particularly last year. COVID-19 forces us to impose restrictions on people's movements. So many services sector is face-to-face. So that kind of services were hit harder than the tradable sector. But if we look at services subsectors, things are much more complicated. Actually, we have three kinds of shocks coming from COVID-19 on services subsectors. One is negative supply shocks, particularly face-to-face services such as restaurants, tourism, and others cannot be delivered. So big negative supply shocks were there. But at the same time, negative demand shocks, say in transportation sector at the beginning, at least. Right now, actually, maritime transportation is having a little bit more complicated things. But initial shocks were negative because of a negative demand shocks, and also weak demand due to the slowdown of the whole economy in the world. But the negative effects like that are probably lighter than expected due to bold mitigation policies implemented in many countries. And we have actually positive demand shocks. I forgot to write medical services. Of course, the medical services were having a big positive demand shocks, and also delivery services and others, as you know. And I'd like to emphasize that one is digitized services and also digital support services. Those are picking up a lot of demand, and also government services too. So the key feature here is the introduction of digital technology. One side is the services sector, actually services sector expanding its scope. That's I call here digitalized services. And the other is actually the other side of the coin. Services sector helps traditional industries, including other services, be digitized. So I call it the digital support services. Based on those two, actually the nature of the services sector changed in a kind of irreversible way. So services sector is going to be more important than before. Next, please. These are charts drawn from WTO documents. As you know that in overall world trade in services dropped. Actually, the trough was deeper than goods, and also the recovery was slower overall. But if you look at the subsectors of services, certainly travel hit the hardest, and also the transportation had a big trough too. But other services, you see that some services are having deep negative effects, but some are positive, particularly computer services. Then the exports of computer services in growth, year-to-year growth, you can see many countries are having positive growth. So we have a mixture of negative supply shocks, negative demand shocks, and positive demand shocks here. Next, please. So if you look at the digitalized services motivated by COVID-19, many services become digitally deliverable. Most of them will stay even after COVID-19. So we observe e-commerce, both domestic and cross-border, grows very rapidly. And also the delivery services expand the scope. Now many various kinds of things, goods and services are delivered by like that. And also the e-payments penetrate. And also the remote work, we are doing the remote work a lot from home. actually that lowers the threshold for service outsourcing, both domestic and cross-border. So the cross-border service outsourcing, that is so-called the third unbundling, or international division of labor at the individual level, that becomes substantial. Certainly a very important example is a BPO in the Philippines, but we have some small example from Japan. Now there's a big boom of online English conversation classes delivered from Cebu Island. Next, please. And also digital support services, that is looking at the issue from the other side. Actually, this kind of services are helping traditional industries be digitized, including other service subsectors, starting from agriculture, logistics, transportation, medical education services, wholesale retail, finance, and also government services. And even manufacturing, actually utilizing communication technology much more intensively right now. That actually strengthens dispersion forces. That would be good for newly developed economies and developing countries, rather than concentration forces, actually pushing so-called reshoring. So I think this is a sort of big change that the digital support services are having a lot of contribution to the world economy. Next, please. Yeah, if you look at the digital technology from the viewpoint of newly developed and developing countries, actually that may enjoy, those kind of countries may enjoy advantage of backwardness. Actually, that backwardness is a really bad word, but actually in this case, in this context, actually advantages, particularly in deployment of digital technology. So now we have not just research and development, but the research and development and deployment. And actually deployment may be easier and faster in newly developed economies compared with developed countries due to many inconveniences are there, and also less complicated regulatory framework and non-existence of old system and vested interest. So I think probably those countries need to shift weights in innovation policies too. The old model requires a massive national innovation system with huge R&D, but probably the weights should be shifted to some extent to the acceleration of deployment for young entrepreneurs and disruptive innovation. So I think that there is more room for catching up and leapfrogging for newly developed and developing countries with digital technology. Next, please. And also implication for inclusiveness. We always have a sort of concern on that from the viewpoint of digital divide, so urban versus rural, and also gender gap over there. Certainly, we have to take care of that. But at the same time, we have to appreciate the inclusive aspects of communication technology. Communication technology expands the scope of possible consumption of goods and services and business opportunities, including the delivering government services over there too. And also the policies for giant platformers. Certainly, this is one side or one aspect of inclusiveness. Proper design of competition policy and taxation is needed over there. Actually, the overall implication for job creation and income distribution coming from digital technology, we are not quite sure yet, actually. Simple substitution for unskilled labor, that would be one hypothesis, but the impact on middle-level human resources, that may be more serious, or we would have some spillover effects for other industry sectors. So we are, actually researchers are looking at what would be the overall effects on employment. Next, please. So in conclusion, I like to emphasize 3 points. One, services sector was hit hard by COVID-19. That's we really have to look at that seriously. Second, however, services sector expands the scope with digital technology, as well as help other industries to be digitized. So that's why services sector will become even more important after COVID-19. Third, services increasingly become domestically and internationally mobile with digital technology. And thus, the policy framework must be substantially modernized. Particularly, a link with the digital and data-related policies will be the key. That's a conclusion in my talk. Thank you very much.